And ready to roll.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to the regular meeting of Hamilton City Council for April 28th, 2021. A little after 6 o'clock here in the City Council Chambers, 345 High Street in Hamilton. We do have two public hearings this evening, one involving CDBG CARES Act funds, as well as amending Hamilton subdivision regulations. Roll call, please.
Pullman.
Present.
Fear.
Present.
Vaughn.
Present.
Ryan.
Here.
Nab.
Present.
Brown.
Yes.
Moeller.
Present. Okay, we're going to start off with an offering of prayer by Councilmember Carla Fear, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you are able.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. Let us never forget our responsibility as elected officials and work to always give our best. Carefully watch over all your people throughout the world. Protect the multitude of men and women serving in the armed forces, as well as our local safety services. And finally, let there be peace on earth. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We now go to special presentations. And the presentation that we've been having is the coronavirus COVID-19 presentation by Health Commissioner Kay Farrar.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, citizens of the city of Hamilton. I'm going to start out tonight by giving you an update on the epidemiology of COVID, where it stands today. We are doing better, so I want to highlight that. So if you'll notice in the parentheses are the compared to 2 weeks ago, so you guys can kind of see where we're at. So there have been over 38,039 cases in Butler County as a whole. That's up 496 from the last report 2 weeks ago. There have been 1,303 hospitalizations. That's up 119 since 2 weeks ago. And we are currently at a death rate of 576 in Butler County, up 10. For the city of Hamilton, the case count is at 5,530. We're averaging a little under a week, 40 per week. Last week's report 2 weeks ago was 50 per week. The total for the city of Hamilton in deaths is 144. There were an additional 6 from 2 weeks ago. Keep in mind, this is a lagging indicator, so that will not improve as quickly as the case count will. The state as a whole in Ohio is very steady at all 3 of those parameters. The incident rate right now is at 13 cases per day per 100,000 of the population. So COVID-19 vaccinations and who is eligible. Again, for Pfizer, these are all under emergency use authorization. For Pfizer, anyone 16 and older, and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson, anyone 18 and older. The good news from 2 weeks ago, following the recommendation of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunizations, or the ACIP, they have released Johnson & Johnson to be again distributed and vaccinations to continue. The city of Hamilton does still have some doses of Johnson & Johnson and plan to use them in the near future. Under vaccinations, remember we are finishing our drive-through clinics at the Butler County Fairgrounds on Thursdays. So we will be doing second doses only clinics for the next 3 Thursdays. Tomorrow we have 1,500 second doses coming. On May the 6th, we have 500 second doses coming. On May 13th, 200 second doses. And that kind of highlights the reason why we're doing away with the drive-throughs. It's not cost effective to have all of us out there for 200 new people at a time. So we're going to move away from the fairgrounds and do another approach, which I talked about last time, which are our pop-up clinics. So vaccinations by the number in Butler County, the overall rate of vaccination is at 36% as of yesterday. You can see them divided up by age group. Keep in mind that we've only opened up the younger age groups recently, but we're steadily improving. Everyone's coming through and getting vaccinated, and we still see interest in getting vaccinated. I've updated the vaccination administration by zip code of residents, and these are the 3 zip codes that are Hamilton zip codes, at least predominantly. So in the 45011, and again in the parentheses, that is the comparison from 2 weeks ago, so you can see the numbers increasing. In 45011, we're at 35.8% of that population. Remember, that's our largest populated area. So there have been 25,495 people vaccinated in that zip code. Last 2 weeks ago was 22,409. So we're still continuing to make progress. 45013, which is the 3rd largest populated zip code in Butler County, is currently at 18,806 vaccinated. That's up from 16,910. The zip code that we really tried to target and have continued to try to target is the 45015, which is all Hamilton, Lindenwold area. And we have increased and improved in that area as well. We're no longer the lowest vaccinated area. It now shifts to Trenton. Sorry to mention that, but they're the lowest vaccinated, and we're now one up from there. So those are all good news. So considering 1-3 and 1-1 are the most populous and 3rd most populous, those sit at, there's 20 zip codes in Butler County. We sit at 9 and 10. So we're doing quite well. We just have to keep forging through. So vaccinations done by the city of Hamilton, specifically by our health department and our team, we're up to 16,170. Those are a list of our pop-up clinics that are upcoming. We are again approaching this by doing pop-ups in small communities so that we have the opportunity to sit with people, answer any questions that they may have. It's a much more intimate setting. Channel 5 was out at Hyde's Restaurant last Friday. We were able to do 40 vaccines there. It was a lot of fun, and some of the comments from the people they interviewed were just that they had previously signed up for the fairgrounds and were a little bit intimidated by that very large venue. And we're happy to see it be melted down and small, and they were able to speak one-on-one with the nurses and have any questions that they had be answered. There is one pop-up clinic on here that not mentioned. It's a closed pop-up clinic. We are doing one at St. Julie's as well, targeting the Hispanic population. I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about variants to COVID-19, which is kind of all the talk right now. So a variant is a mutation. All genes, all viruses mutate. They have the capability and the ability to do that. So globally, not just in the United States, all health professionals are monitoring the variants of COVID-19. The CDC classifies variants into 3 categories. So as you can see on the screen, the first is variants of interest. Those are just ones that they're watching. They're not necessarily very concerned about them. They're always denoted by numbers because it's the gene sequencing that the genealogists watch, and they watch if they mutate on what level. So those are 3 or 4 that are being monitored currently just as of interest. The variants of concern include that B.1.1.7, which is also known as the UK variant. It is being studied quite closely. It is of concern. It's in that group because its ability to transmit from person to person more readily than COVID-19 originally was, and it also seems to be more deadly. So they're following that one as well. There's also one from South Africa that they're monitoring, and there's 2 that originated in California. So they're usually named by where they were first discovered. The last classification, and I'm proud and happy to say there are none in this group, would be variants of high concern or high consequence. So currently there are none in that category. So to date, our current vaccines protect us against all the known variants, the ones that I just mentioned, both the variants of interest and the variants of concern. It is important to note that vaccine is safe, and it's not getting vaccinated exposes all of the population to the potential for the formation of new and more variants. An unvaccinated individual is a host that can be the one where a variant is made. Let us not ever forget, I say this is my 3rd time saying this, and I'm probably going to say it every time, a virus that is not replicating cannot form a variant. So we really have to continue on. We're doing a great job. I really see the numbers improving. I think the message from the CDC allowing and suggesting that it's safe to be outside in open air without a mask is a big show of that we are winning this. We've got a ways to go, but we're going all in the right direction. And I thank everyone for their patience and continuing to do all the stuff that we've tried to tell people will help. Any questions?
Questions or comments? I want to say thank you for your pop-up locations at Lindenwold United Methodist and St. Julie's. I hope that they're well attended. I think those are just great spots to be at. And did I see over 75% of Butler Countyans from 70 to 74 have been vaccinated?
Yeah.
Wow.
We had a very compliant group in that oldest group, and again, we've been vaccinating them the longest, so they've had more opportunity to find places. They were also the group that was probably the most fearful of this virus and really wanted to get vaccinated, as well as they went into nursing homes and vaccinated all the long-term care facility residents. So they've definitely had the most ability to be vaccinated. The largest numbers of positive cases are in the younger crowd now. They're in the late teens, which those 16, 17, and 18-year-olds can get vaccinated now with Pfizer. I don't have that. And then the early 20s. So that's the group that is transmitting the most right now.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
We now go to audience of citizens, and we have one person who signed the book. And I talked to Jim Loneman today, and if Jim can hear me out there, I will work on getting him the address of the person who owns the property.
Mr. Mayor, I'm also connecting with him as well.
Great.
So be able to assist him.
So he's been taken care of. Did anybody send any emails since our last meeting that need to be read or should be read into the record at this time?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Winding down, maybe the email-only audience of citizens. We'll see how that goes. But that's how we've been doing audience of citizens. We now go to the consent agenda. That includes all meeting minutes, all staff reports, caucus reports, receive and file information, and our informational reports on both the monthly financial report for March 2021 and the monthly investment report for March 2021. Now, regarding the consent agenda, caucus agenda, is there a motion that the regular meeting be recessed and the committee of the whole take place?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Vaughn, second by Vice Mayor Pullman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. So we're going into the committee of the whole at 6:17. So who is presenting first?
So for item number 2 on the caucus agenda, we will have Edwin Porter about the Channel Monster sewage grinder.
Thank you.
That's the one.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor, members of council, and citizens of the city of Hamilton. My name is Edwin Porter. I'm a supervising mechanical engineer within the Department of Infrastructure, and I appreciate the opportunity to present tonight. I'll be presenting on the water reclamation facility channel monster sewage grinder. Okay, so the water reclamation facility currently uses 2 sewage grinders. One sewage grinder is a JWC environmental channel monster grinder. The other sewage grinder is a Worthington comminutor. It's approximately 40 years old. It's beyond its service life, and it's becoming increasingly unreliable. In order to maintain reliable operation of the plant, the water reclamation facility is requested to replace the 40-year-old Worthington grinder with a JWC environmental channel monster grinder, which is similar to the one in operation. What this does is it allows us to buy similar parts and keep them on the shelf, which increases reliability and it reduces costs and allows quickness of response for repairs. This piece of equipment can only be purchased through the Henry P. Thompson Company, and the cost is $94,194.84. We are requesting council to waive the competitive bidding process and proceed with the purchase of the JWC Environmental Channel Monster Sewage Grinder from the single supplier, the Henry P. Thompson Company. Okay. So here's a couple of photos. On the left-hand side is the existing Worthington comminutor, and on the right-hand side is the existing Channel Monster sewage grinder. Are there any questions that I may address?
I found it fascinating when I read the caucus report. Can you tell us the importance of this sewage grinder?
I'm sure you want to know, but
Well, use only certain terms, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so both of these sewage grinders are required during high water events. And so when we get high water events such as storms, we redirect flow into a storage portion of our facility. And these grinders, what they do is they grind up solids, anything that comes through the sewers, rags, etc., before getting into the settling basins. Because once they go into the settling basins, then they have to be pumped, and any large solids, etc., can clog pumps, cause clogs within the piping system, and create substantial amounts of damage. And also, solids will settle to the bottom, and you have to, it's very time-consuming to clean those solids out.
I found it fascinating myself. All right. Sorry, but what's next? You doing any other ones?
Oh, that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, can you tell us, when you said the existing unit is 40 years old,
Mhm.
and you talked about high water events and things, when those are running, how much, is it called efflues? Is that the correct term? How much passes through those? Is it 1,000 gallons a minute, 500 gallons a minute?
Sure. So each one is rated at 15 million gallons per day of inflow. Mhm.
Cool.
Yep. So both of them combined, 30 million gallons per day.
I thought that was interesting. I knew the throughput wouldn't be 1,000 gallons, but I thought millions, and you think about what you folks do for the city, for the entire complement of what we try to do, and running with a 40-year-old piece of equipment that's antiquated, that's on its last legs and things, so it makes sense to be able to invest in something else's kid brother, and as you said, to be able to have interchangeable parts and
That's
work from
correct.
the same company, so, good.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for what you
Councilman.
do.
Thank you
Good
very much.
presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you for using solids.
Next one is going to be next other one. The other one. Next, Mr. Mayor, I have, it's item number 3 on the caucus agenda. It's related to section 543.05 of the municipal code, and Mr. Tim Wordman will be presenting.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. That's a tough act to follow. I don't know that I'm going to be nearly as entertaining as Mr. Porter, but I'm just here because what we're trying to do is consolidate appeals processes having to do with nuisances. Currently, we have the chronic nuisance ordinance that has its separate appeal process that goes to a hearing officer, kind of on an ad hoc basis. But under the property nuisance provisions of the municipal code, we have a standing nuisance appeals board that actually consists of not just members of the City of Hamilton administration, but also has members of the community. And so what we are suggesting is to move the chronic nuisance appeals to that nuisance appeals board. It will streamline things and brings different viewpoints to the appeals process. And that's simply what we're trying to accomplish with this legislative change.
Great. Makes sense. Any comments or questions from council?
Different
Thank you.
different kind of process than what Mr. Porter has, but important nonetheless.
Different kind of grinder, I guess, huh?
Did not mention the word solids once.
Next, Mr. Mayor, I've got a presentation for items number 4 and number 8 in the caucus agenda from City Manager Joshua
Okay.
Smith.
Thank you. The first item is a purchase of 12th North 10th Street. And just to provide some background on that, it's on the caucus agenda tonight. The first reading would take place on May 12th, and the second reading would take place on May 26th. It's hard to see on the screen, but it is the yellow highlighted property. Just to give you some perspective, it is north of East High Street. It is immediately east of North 10th Street. It is south of Stewart and west of the Walgreens parking lot. The site plan for the property of the redevelopment of that area, and again, this is a little hard to see, where 12 North 10th Street is currently located, that would be the access drive to the development. There is the proposed development. I should caveat this by saying that since this property and the yellow house that sits on the corner of 10th and High Street sit within the existing historic district, that this would also require another level of approval, which would be through the ADRB. But for tonight's purposes, we're just talking about the purchase of the property, understanding that there's other processes that will have to take place after this one. And so the purpose of the buying that property is simply to facilitate the development that you see currently on the screen. But that is the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Right,
Mr. Mayor,
please.
so that picture up there, what's the street to the right?
That is East High Street.
Oh, so that's High Street, okay.
Yes. So on the left of the screen, it looks like it's heading to the north. That is North 10th Street.
That's 10th there, okay, got it. Sorry, I'm challenged a little bit when it comes
Not
to
a problem.
maps and direction.
Josh, just in my comment, what a compliment to the community if that all goes through. And the access to the 10th Street side of the building, the access to the High Street side of the building, the visual complement that it adds to people coming into Hamilton, leaving Hamilton and things. So I hope that this opportunity presents itself and becomes a reality.
Well, I appreciate that. Obviously, it's a very delicate balance. Being on the very end of the historic district, and East High Street, for the most part, is a heavily traveled commercial corridor. So over the last 40 to 50 years, a lot of the historic properties have left, especially the far east end of High Street. And it's somewhat of a challenge in some of the outlying properties to make them a viable use. Obviously, keeping our historic framework, which is going to be the next presentation I do, which is at the CSX Depot. But yes, I appreciate those comments. So with that, the next caucus item I have is the CSX Depot relocation. Obviously, it's on the caucus agenda for tonight. The first reading would be May 12th. The second reading would be May 26th. As City Council knows, and I think the public is aware of, CSX began the demolition process of the property. The city asked CSX to provide a timeline for the city to see if we could acquire funds and or figure out a plan to relocate the property. So just some background on the property. It was originally created as a depot for the Cincinnati, Hamilton, and Dayton Railroad. It's been involved with other railroads throughout its history, including the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. In more recent years, it's been affiliated with CSX. The property has been either underutilized or simply not utilized for quite a long time now. Passenger rail service stopped there in the early 2000s when it used to be on the Cardinal line. And as the property has deteriorated, CSX wanted to demolish it. The question in front of council is, does council wish to save the depot for a cost of $600,000? So if the answer is no, the final vote would take place on May 26th, and council can simply just vote no, and then we're done with the property, and then CSX would just commence with their demolition. If the answer is yes, I wanted to make sure these steps were clear and that I could answer any questions from council. So if on May 26th, it is decided by council to save the depot with our estimated cost of $600,000, which I will itemize in a moment, the first thing that would have to happen is at the first meeting in June, we would add a budget supplemental for that amount. The second thing is we would sign an agreement with the relocation company, which has been down to see the depot. They've told us they can move it. They're comfortable in their ability to move it, and they've given us a firm quote. Also in June, we would start the design of a new foundation. So when we move the depot, it would have a place to go. We're hopeful that by the end of July, we would start the construction of the new foundation, or maybe August, September timeframe, once it was bid. And then the timeline to move the depot, we believe, is October. We would have to negotiate that with the moving company, but that sounded reasonable when they were here. And once it's been moved and placed on a new foundation, we would have to evaluate what improvements we would need to make sure that the building was secure from further damage. The Hamilton Community Foundation has been brought into this project. There's a letter that was written to council that was provided to council several weeks ago. They're willing to participate, but they want these steps to take place first. I did have a conversation and copied council on the email I sent to the foundation this past Saturday, asking if they would be willing to set up or establish a separate fund for people to make donations for this first process, which is going to cost about $600,000. And of that $600,000, $120,000 would be general fund dollars. I want to make that clear also. And they've agreed to do that. So there will be two funds at the foundation. There'll be a fund immediately for people if they want to donate towards the relocation of the depot. And then once the depot has been relocated, then there would be a fund established to improve the depot. Long term, the city would own the depot, as shown on the map on the screen, that it is a relatively short move, and just to the north in the area that is highlighted orange. I don't know if we can get that. Do you have that on screen on the camera? They see that? Okay, good. And this drawing, even though this drawing shows the depot located closer to the railroad tracks, still working with the engineers on the design, but we think currently, and this could change, and obviously council has input on this, we think the optimal design is to place the depot closer to MLK, have parking in between the rail line and the depot building itself, and that would allow us to construct a train platform in the hopes that Amtrak would pick us back up for passenger service again. And so again, once it's relocated and placed on the foundation and the building's been secure, which were the three criteria established by the Hamilton Community Foundation, at that point, they would begin the assistance of a capital campaign to improve it. What the depot could be in the future, it could be a lot of things. It could be office space, it could be a restaurant bar, it could be a welcome center, it could be a farmer's market. So the future use certainly could be dictated by city council. But with that, I just want to make sure that council had enough information for you, understanding that the caucus item is preparing you for a yes or no vote going into the future. So we just wanted to know if there was enough information tonight that was presented, and if further information is required before the first meeting in May, which I believe is May 12th, then if you could advise staff, and we would prepare that additional information for your consideration.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a couple questions. With regard to Hamilton Community Foundation participating, they're not actually putting money in, they're just going to oversee accounts and accept it, is that right? Or are they going to match funds?
They have not committed to matching any funds. What they have committed to, though, is running a capital campaign on the city's behalf.
Okay. I know that we have a bid to move the building. Is there a guarantee? Are these people experienced enough that they know that when they set it back down, it's going to be in the same condition it was when they moved it? Whose liability or responsibility is that?
If it's all right with council, Rich Engel is the engineer with us. He had more detailed conversations than I did with the mover. They sounded comfortable in my conversation, but Rich, if you don't mind maybe addressing the question also, you probably could provide some additional detail.
Yes, we've talked to the mover, who are dinghy movers out of Zanesville, Ohio. They're very confident that they can move the structure. In fact, if any of you are familiar with Columbus, there's an arch near Nationwide Arena. They moved that arch, and I have a photo of it that I can share with council in the morning. So they have done major moves like this before.
Okay. Do you have another question? I can't think of it right now.
Mayor?
Please.
Rich, we're going to lose the connector building, though, when we do this, correct?
That is correct. That's a separate causeway between the two distinct structures, so that's not part of the move.
It's not,
And
a, very,
the
it's not a
structures,
very strong structure like the other two buildings, so that's why we're going to lose that.
correct, and
Which is not a
the
big deal.
buildings will have to be probably at least 6 feet apart due to the structural steel they'll be using to move them. So there will be space between the two buildings.
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
So, Rich, one part is older than the other, maybe Joshua. Is there an option of moving one part and not the other, saving the oldest part? And I'm sorry, I don't recall which one was older or original.
I believe the single-story building is the older of the two, and it's actually in the way, or the two-story building is in the way of the single-story building, so it really needs to be moved or demolished first if you want to just save one of the two.
Okay. And structurally, one wasn't more sound than the other. They looked at it in its entirety, like we can move it all.
There'll be two separate moves, but
Right,
yes, they can
right.
be moved
Okay, they can move both.
independently of
Right.
each other, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that is an actual rendition of what it's going to look like, even though you're talking about not all the buildings going. That is what it'll be.
So you would, the small piece that connects the long depot building with the 3-story structure,
Right.
that small piece, that's going to have to be reconstructed.
Okay. We can't get CSX to give us more time now that we finally are really taking this serious, because I just feel like we're doing things backwards to get the budget. Everything we're doing, I think, should be done before we ever consider moving it. And I know a lot of times I say that I know it's a risk, but it's a bigger risk not to. But this just concerns me. It's almost like a crapshoot that we don't have an actual plan before we move anything. We don't know if we're going to come up with enough money. We don't know what's going to need to be done inside it. I think I would be more inclined to be in favor of it if CSX would give us another 6 months even to extend it so that we can do that work in the meantime.
We certainly can go back to CSX. Rich, please correct me if I'm wrong. My recollection was they wanted us to move it this year.
Right.
And we asked for an extension, and they gave us to the end of March of next year.
Right.
I'm certainly willing to go back to CSX and ask for another 6-month extension. And I can certainly report back at the next council meeting. I mean, I'll let council know in advance, but yeah, I mean, so I think council understands this. Maybe this is more for the public, but call it the 600,000 does not get us a renovated depot structure. It just simply it moves the depot, it puts it on a brand new foundation, and there's enough money, we believe, to secure the building against further damage, meaning the weather. So the roof and some windows will have to be taken care of for that $600,000 amount, but it does not get us a finished depot. It just simply, it allows us time to figure out other funding options.
Joshua, one point of interest in conversations that I've had with people in the community, moving it from its current site to the new site, what, and Rich, maybe you'll know because engineering and things, how much space will that take up of the new site? Let's suppose that it's on a half acre now and the new site is 2 acres-ish? Am I around there someplace?
I believe it will fit on the MLK. So if you wanted to put it close to MLK, it would fit. If you oriented it north and south, it would fit nicely. Then I think the vision would be a parking lot in the middle of that orange shaded area that's on the screen. And then if we were lucky enough to get an Amtrak stop, then there would be enough space left over to construct a platform. Yes.
And one of the gentlemen said, Tim, how much space? And I said, I can't answer that, and that's why I was going to ask tonight if that's going to take up roughly a third of the property, and the other third, say, for parking, and the other third perhaps for a platform and things. I said, we might be able to have an answer on that this evening because it was on the agenda, so.
I don't know if you can estimate a percentage of property that would take up. I'm guessing 20 to 25%.
I'd rather have our staff take a look at it.
He's an engineer.
Thanks, fellas, because I didn't expect a hard answer, but I thought that is a good question. In the size of the property that we own, and then from where it's being taken to where it would be set then on the new foundation, and then again, as Carla asked and things, what we might use it for, Joshua, that you explained, could be many, many things. Over the years, it's been hailed as a potential restaurant and bistro and things like that, but our welcome center. So again,
I'm not sure if this is necessarily material to your question, but immediately to the west of MLK, there is a new parking lot that is available to the public after 5 o'clock. So as an example, if it would become a restaurant, you would have not only the parking that could be on site, you would have 150 plus parking spaces immediately to the west also. So that would help with some of the parking issues, like for an evening crowd, if you will.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Rich, if we decide to move this, does the company anticipate any potential damages that might occur once the building is lifted and then it starts moving? Is there any risk that we should know to take into consideration when they start moving it?
Well, there's always a risk when you're moving a structure of that size, but I know the walls on the two-story building were probably 3 or 4 brick thick. So it's a substantially well-constructed building. But again, there's always a risk when you're trying to excavate underneath a foundation, put reinforcing steel underneath it. Actually, the beams on the two-story building, they said are going to probably be 5 foot tall, which means they're going to have to dig down that deep underneath the structure itself, and then gently raise it up and put it on their wheels, so to speak, that are all independently operated, and it'll probably, they said it travels at 3 miles per hour.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I've got it. Oh, you go ahead.
Mine's a simple question. Just to make sure that when that building goes down in between, we really don't have to reconstruct that. That could be an outdoor dining with like a pergola over it or something like that too. It's not a structural thing between the buildings that has to be back there, correct?
No, that is correct.
Okay, good.
That was just simply
it could be a good outdoor dining. We don't have to build that right away and have that just so the public knows that, because I've had that asked.
And if we want more separation between the two structures, we'll need to know that as we're designing
Good idea.
Foundation.
the foundation. The single-story building will be on a slab. It will not have a foundation, but the two-story building will have a foundation.
Okay. Right.
So is this building, is it on the National Register now, the Historic Register?
I can answer those. It's on the Ohio Registry, definitely. That was done, I don't know how many decades ago. And as a result of a March 23rd meeting this year, CHAPS is working on a doable plan for National Historic Registry. But the problem is, it's not in the city's name. So CSX, I think, would have to be a joint person asking for it to be on the registry.
Okay.
So,
And would we be trying to get historic tax credits for that?
If the decision was made by council to relocate the structure, and once it's in the city's name, then we would have to go through the National Registry first, so the National Park Service. Once we have that designation, then it becomes eligible for an application for both federal and state historic tax credits.
Even though it's being moved, I mean, I know when we did the Robinson Schwinn building to get tax credits, they said you can't even pull the first nail out. They want to see the plans ahead of time. this is a building that's being picked up and moved to, so that's not going to put anything in danger as far as tax credits go?
So my conversation with the state of Ohio on that is they think that it would be eligible because otherwise it gets demolished by CSX.
Okay.
Obviously, before there is it's a very long application. I was reading through it this past weekend. The one thing that caught my eye was they will allow you to what they do call emergency repairs to secure the building, but to your point, they don't want any structural changes. So once it's moved, I would advocate we put limited funds into securing it, just the bare minimum, so we do not harm our chances, if it's decided to do this, to get an application in for both state and federal historic tax credits.
So to Eric's point, we would have to replace that little area.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I mean, that's not
Wasn't the
considered.
original?
Yeah, the two historic buildings are, I think, is what their focus area is going to be.
Okay. And then, when's the last time somebody was inside there to size it up? I mean, we can't get anyone in there between now and the next meeting to come
Last
up with
week we were in
some
there.
I was
kind
in
of rough
I was in the
budget?
building next week.
Okay.
Last week I was in the building. You're saying for like a full restoration or just to secure the building?
Just whatever would be in that $600,000.
Oh, that to me is just.
When we talk
yeah.
about the budget, like when you talked about the steps that would happen if it got approved.
Right.
I'm talking about, is that there's some way to get a better idea of the budget before we move it? I mean, it could be cost prohibitive. So I just didn't know if there's really no way to go in there before this vote to get an idea?
Again, as part of the 600,000?
Yes.
I feel comfortable that we can do that for 600,000. Now, what I can't tell you is I don't have a solid sense of what a full restoration looks like. I mean, that could be incredibly expensive. But to do what's on that screen, which is simply to pick it up, move it, place it on a slab/new foundation, and secure it. I mean, our quick strike team could do a lot of the secure work, if you will. It's the real cost, in my mind, is going to come when we look at the full restoration.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Please.
might there be grant money even for the move, or?
Just as a result of the meeting we had March 23rd, before then, I can answer some of these questions, maybe not all of them, but some of them. Regarding the movement and the effect on the historic registry, the people who I think are in charge of heritage up in Columbus, which does the markers, says that doesn't affect as long as it's a repair versus type of situation. That's my understanding. This building is 4 bricks thick, if I'm not mistaken, which kind of tells you how it lasted the last 170 years to be able to see Lincoln, Truman, Eisenhower, soldiers and sailors leaving the city for various wars, coming home for various wars. So it's been 170 years. That says a little bit, I think, about the building. But there's no doubt there's got to be some rough work done on that. Historic Hamilton has a depot committee set up right now. They're the ones who saved the log cabin, also saved Farmers Market. I mentioned CHAPS. They're the ones who are trying to put together a truly doable plan to, in the very near future, get it on the National Historic Registry. It takes a consultant, but they're looking for grants and donors to get that done. The rendering that you saw may not be perfectly to scale, but there is some scale to that. That was done by a volunteer named Dan Schneider, who's with a group called Hollow Earth Creations, named after the Sims Park Hollow Earth Monument. And he can relocate that in various places on that particular lot. So there's been a lot of volunteer-driven activity on this so far, especially since March 23rd. There's a very small meeting that we had, 15 people from historic groups. It was intentionally meant to be small. And of course, the Amtrak possibilities were discussed and the like. But the history of this is so significant that I'm glad we're spending a little bit more time on it. And I believe if we get it in our name, there'll be more grants available. A former vice mayor sent me a whole list of foundations, including the Historic Station Foundation. And there is something called Historic Station Foundation. But they're not going to touch that, I don't think, if it's in the name of CSX. I mean, they're not going to just give money. Will they do that to potential 501c3 or something like that, or the city. I think there's probably a significant possibility of that. At least it's got to be in the city's name or somebody's name instead of CSX. So that answers some of the questions. I know there's others out there. There's going to be a lot of them come up between now and the votes in May. But, this is one of those things that, if there's a decision to keep it, it'll be there for future generations. If there's a decision not to, and it's well thought out and voted on, that's a decision that we all have to make.
And if it's decided not to, I mean, I was going to send Daniel a picture because it's worth 1,000 words. But for instance, that there's the Stewart part up in Oxford. It used to be Talawanda High School, and then when they built the new one, it became Stewart Junior High. And when they tore that down, they took the entire framing, the limestone, everything out, and it is the entrance of a park. So I still believe that we can save part of this if we don't keep the whole building. But I guess my next question is, when we move this, for as long as it sits there until we come up with funding or developer or whatever, who pays, and maybe you said this already, but who pays to have it maintained and insured, and that's everything with the city, right?
Yep, that would be 100% on the city of Hamilton.
And we don't have any idea what that would be while it's there?
I can't give you a solid number right now. Dave Jones is here. It doesn't have any utilities with it currently, so there would be really no cost associated with that. The insurance on it, would you say about $1,000 a year maybe?
Yeah, roughly. So it's going to have liability insurance regardless. If you put extra, like say, property type of insurance on it, it runs about $1,300 a year for $1.7 million worth of coverage.
So I mean, we already own the property we're taking it to, so we're already responsible for the maintenance of the real estate currently. So I think the only cost I can think of, I mean, again, we're gonna have to secure the building, but that's in our $600,000 budget estimate. Yeah, I'd say that insurance premium would certainly be a city cost.
Okay, thank you.
Something else, I've been contacted by several folks who actually have done this in various cities. Hearst, Kentucky, there's a restaurant down there. A lot of them do become welcome centers, including Greeley, Colorado, Yellow Springs, Mount Vernon, Berea. Richmond, Indiana built a business district around an historic station. So there are a lot of creative ideas for something like this. One person who contacted me said that there are some craftsmen who will volunteer their time for a project like this, to be part of a project like this.
Did these places pick it up and move it somewhere though, or was it sitting where it is? Because I know when you look at Middletown and other places, it's already sitting there.
Oakland, Michigan, I think, has moved or plans on moving 4 of them. I mean, there's one of these moving companies that I found their website, and it shows them moving a train station. I mean, a depot. Not confusing with a full-size station, but they had a depot on their vehicle, and the wheels are about the size of the building. So,
Mr. Mayor, I just have one more question.
Yes.
Kind of surrounding the foundation, and Rich, when you said the low building would be on a slab, would you anticipate that those would be plumbed ahead of time for some sort of opportunity in the future for indoor utility, or is that a wish list thing that would go after the fact?
We could possibly take that into account when we're building the foundation, at least get some holes through the wall that can be easily removed. We'd have to look at that. I was in it just to look around to see what shape the structure was in.
I was thinking in terms of restrooms and just normal things that utility would be appropriate, and as long as you're putting a foundation, and that's the time to do it.
I agree 100%. It should be contemplated during the design process for the foundation.
No, if it ever becomes part of an Amtrak line, if it ever becomes that, it's got to be a restroom, got to have a drinking fountain, got to have some services for people who are waiting for the train, no matter what time of day that it is. That's what I've been told, that the platforms have to have those type of amenities.
A lot of ifs.
Well, I took a note. I will certainly, before the May 12th council meeting, I will give an update on the 6-month extension from CSX request. And
If they could, I am just not comfortable with this as it is. I just feel like it's just a crapshoot trying to do it without any kind of plan at all. when you look at everything that we could spend this money on in the city that's going on right now, that really, I'm just not comfortable with it.
Well, that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Carla, thanks for bringing up solids again in your.
I was going to say something. No, I mean, Abraham Lincoln didn't have bathrooms, so, you know.
Yeah. Is he on Google or is he? He should be this one right here.
So next up on the caucus agenda, we will have items 5 and 6 related to purchasing a property along New London Road and West Fairway Drive. That'll be the first one. The second one will be the 2021 concrete repair, resurfacing program, and Corwin Avenue assessment roll. Presentation done by Mr. Rich Engel, the Director of Engineering.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens of Hamilton. First project I want to talk about is the widening of New London Road at FAIRWay. If you recall, we had a pedestrian incident out there a couple years ago, and we've been working diligently to try and resolve that. So our plan is to widen New London Road and provide a new left turn lane for eastbound travelers to go northbound on FAIRWay. We'll have a crosswalk with rectangular rapid flashing beacon to cross New London. We'll have new sidewalk on the north side of New London. We'll be restriping New London to have the new turn lane in it. And we're submitting this project to ODOT. They have paused their safety funding program, but once it becomes active again, we're going to submit this project. It's about a $300,000 project. It'll be anticipated to be 100% funding at the moment. They may change that percentage at some time. But as a result of that, we need to purchase a small, narrow strip of land on the north side at the intersection at the corner. And then we have 3 different temporary construction easements that we need to purchase. So we've been in negotiation with the property owners through the federal acquisition process to be able to comply with the funding from ODOT. That's where we are right now. We'll be bringing the actual cost of those negotiations, the cost of the property and the easement to council in the future as we get those approved and agreed upon with the property owners. Have any questions on that?
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Rich, so is this something possible by next school year? Or are we looking maybe another year?
No, it'll probably be another year.
Okay.
Because as part of the sidewalk construction, we have to construct a retaining wall on the other side of the sidewalk in order to construct the sidewalk adjacent to New London Road. So we probably won't get all of the property acquired until mid to late summer.
Okay.
And then we'll probably start construction, but again, it really depends on the ODOT funding.
Okay, thank you.
When they release that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks for getting that done, Rich.
And this is a rendering of the easements. The yellow are the temporary construction easements and the green is the property purchase. And then the next project is the property assessment for 2 of the road projects, street replacement projects that we talked about a couple of council meetings ago. This is the Leo Sanders water main and concrete repair and resurfacing project. We'll be providing preliminary assessment letters to the residents on Leo Sanders, Kelly Court, Carroll Court, and Hermé. And then the Corwin Avenue utility project. Again, we'll be sending out preliminary assessments for sidewalks and driveway approaches on Corwin and Hayes. You have any questions on this caucus report?
Apparently not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thanks.
Any other committee of the whole reports on these other items at all?
Well, Mr. Mayor, we do have presentations for every item if there need be any other questions, the Director of Planning, Liz Hayden, is here. If you have any questions about item number 7, which is the amending of previously approved conditional use. I know that Mr. Nate Perry is present for item number 11, and then I can also briefly go over 9 and 10, which are liquor permits.
Okay, let's just take one at a time. Any questions about number 7, which involves conditional use for storage facility on Fairgrove? Any questions about that for Liz or anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just
Please.
one quick question. So I know there were 3 comments from people. Are those citizens or residents around there happy now with the answers they got? I mean, how do we address that?
I believe they were. It went through Planning Commission, but Liz can best answer that question.
Okay, I appreciate it, and they were good questions. I assume they got an answer back, but just wanted to double check.
Good evening. So pretty much everything that you'll see from the planning department that comes to city council has gone through planning commission. So there's been a robust public hearing. In this case, there was 2 for this change. And at the end of the conversation, there were no objections.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think their comments were about drainage.
Yes.
About the drainage situation.
Mosquitoes or bugs that might be there, but I think it looks like the water drains pretty quickly away. Okay, thanks.
That was very well vetted by Planning Commission.
Yeah.
9 and 10 have to do with liquor permits. Any question about the liquor permits at all?
Mayor, if I may just mention, at least for the record, that up until like recently, we just started a newer process with liquor permits. After having some conversations with the Ohio Department of Liquor Control, we now understand that this can be a long process for a newer business, and the city still has ways to ensure that a new operator will comply with codes through the permitting process. So this is more of a formality than anything else.
Yes, I know that we're instituting some changes in the procedure to really assist the small business. Number 11. Any some questions, Nate?
I've got just a brief presentation.
If you would, because I just saw, I walked past a car recently and it was plugged in. I'm going, okay, that could be a lot of that going on in 5 years, maybe around Spooky Nook and other places. So if you could just give us a little bit of idea what that's about, we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're excited to announce that is this the right presentation?
Should be.
It was the smaller one that I sent you this afternoon.
That's not.
Yeah, that was the larger one.
We'll find that real quick.
Well, anyways, I'm excited to announce that we were had the opportunity to accept a $45,000 grant to install 3 EV charging stations. And so that'll account for 6 spots. The city's cost will be $15,000, and we budgeted for that through the 2021 process. These are level 2 charging stations, and really depending on the car, we estimate that you'll get about 50 to 75 miles on an hour's worth of charge. And we're partnering with a company called ChargePoint, and they have one of the largest networks of charging fleets. So they've got an app, and you can see if a spot is available to charge in, how charged your car is. It's a really customer-friendly application that they have. So this is a picture of what the facility will look like. All of these cords are self-retractable, so it's not cluttering up any space. And then we've identified these 3 locations for the charging points. So one is in our city lot behind this building. One is in the lot just near Fretboard on Main Street. And then one in the overflow spot for the sports complex. And I also want to note the Marriott has a charging station in their lot as well. So this will give us an opportunity to get a few of these in here, evaluate the demand in our community, and continue to expand that as our customers want to use these facilities.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Nate, so how do we monitor these so that people aren't parking there all night or day? I mean, I know the one on Main Street, I'm familiar with that location, it's in a lot with apartments around it. Someone could just pull up and stay there for long periods.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with a solution there. When customers plug into it, they'll get notifications that their vehicle's charged and they need to move it. So as long as they're actually interacting with it as an electric vehicle, we can send notifications to customers, or even, shut off their charging if they've stayed there too long, or charge additional fees. So we'll have to monitor that with our parking team for how we assess parking tickets for customers who park there too long.
Okay, are any or all of these at a meter?
No, so the main requirement of this grant is that they had to be in a parking lot. So there was ADA compliance and some different things like that. So we chose lots that would meet the requirements of the grants.
Okay, great, thank you.
Nate, if you will, that station is a 2-unit station?
Yes, that is a great question. So this will be 6, allow for 6 vehicles, but 3 stations.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thanks for securing the grant.
Yeah, thank you guys.
I'm shocked.
You're welcome.
Got a charge out of that one, yeah. Jeez.
Okay, now, that takes care of Caucus Agenda Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion that the Committee of the Whole be closed?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nab, second by Councilmember Ryan. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried at 7:04. Is there a motion with the regular meeting be reconvened?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilmember Fear, second by Councilmember Brown. Roll call vote to reconvene the regular meeting.
Let's see. Got Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes,
Motion adopted, 7-0.
we reconvene the regular meeting. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor Pullman,
make a motion that, with the exception of the items so noted, that council receives a report of the consent agenda and concur in their recommendations.
Second.
motion by Vice Mayor Pullman, second by Councilmember Nab. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. Okay, we now go to the public hearing. Now I'll set the motion to the regular meeting be recessed and public hearing take place.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nab, second by Councilmember Fear. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. It is 7:05, so we go into the first public hearing. If we read into the record, please.
A public hearing regarding a substantial amendment to the fiscal year 2019-2020 annual action plan. This plan includes a recommended budget of $342,332 for the Community Development Block Grant CARES Act CDBG-CV3 funds. And we do have Tamika Hedgerton on Zoom for a presentation. We'll get that set up for you all shortly.
Great, thank you. For the record, no one has signed the public hearing book for agenda item number 12, which is the CDBG Block Grant CARES Act public hearing.
Hey, Tamika, you can try sharing your screen for your presentation.
Can you see it okay?
Yep.
Good evening. I am here representing the Neighborhood Development Division as we present for the use of CDBG CV3 funds, and that stands for Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Relief Funds. This is the third round administered by under HUD, but only the second round that will be received by the City of Hamilton, and in the set amount of $342,322. The funds were initially announced September 11th of 2020, but did not receive final approval until after the first of the year, hence the reason why we're doing the substantial amendment now. In order to utilize the funds, the city must conduct a substantial amendment, and that basically consists of having a public meeting, public hearing, and also information sessions through the community. The substantial amendment will be conducted under the fiscal year 2019-2020 annual action plan, which is the same plan that the first round of CDBG-CV funds was received last summer. The eligible uses for the CDBG-CV3 round funds remain the same, and they'll be, again, public health, public services, building and improvement, assistance to businesses, planning, capacity building, and technical assistance. The proposed activities include the following, but may not be limited to the following. So once again, we'll be committing funds to public health, public services. More specifically, funds will again go to neighborhood housing services for utility, rental, and mortgage assistance, but we'll also be providing funds to two public services that will provide community support and summer programs for youth, and those will be run under Hype Hamilton and the YMCA. And then we also have allotted funds for activity delivery costs. Written comments were accepted between April 12th and April 23rd, and we conducted a public meeting on April 20th. The Finance Department recommends that City Council concur with the proposed substantial amendment and approve the update to the annual action plan. At this time, I welcome any questions, comments, concerns.
Any questions for Tamika? Thank you for your presentation.
You're more than welcome.
Is there anyone else in the city who wishes to make any comment or be heard at this public hearing? Anyone in the city? Anyone in council wish to be heard or make a motion at this time?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Nab?
I move the public hearing be closed.
So moved. Motion by Councilmember Nab, second by Councilmember Brown. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. That public hearing is closed at 7:09. We now go into the next public hearing.
A public hearing regarding amending the City of Hamilton subdivision regulations, ordinance number 6038. Tonight we'll have a presentation by Liz Hayden, the Director of the Planning Department, who will provide some information context for this public hearing.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. I told Daniel that I would do a brief 30-minute, highly technical presentation on our subdivision regulations for you all tonight. So I'll try to just be really quick, and then if something I say sounds like you want to talk more about or have questions, just let me know, but I'm going to breeze through it. So subdivision regulations, they govern plats and the subdivision of land within the city. They're most commonly used, or what we think about with them is large, like new residential subdivisions, but they are relevant to all kinds of development in the community. And our current regulations were created in 1959. They have been amended throughout the years, most recently in 2014. But we've had an increase in residential development over the past 5 years, and that has brought attention to significant changes that we thought needed to happen to the subdivision regulations, and they kind of fall under three buckets. Modernize the regulations, incorporate lessons learned from the Great Recession, and employ best practices from around the region. We ultimately had enough changes that we are calling them new subdivision regulations. So proposed major changes: construction of primary public infrastructure will be completed prior to final plat approval. The goal is to avoid half-completed streets if a project stalls. All new roads will be public roads with updated right-of-way widths to match Butler County's regulations. The current regulations allow developers to propose private roads. There's going to be proposing requirements to complete sidewalks within 5 years of the approved final plat. Currently, sidewalks do not need to be completed until a lot is built upon. Preliminary plats with more than 5 lots will be forwarded to City Council for review and approval by resolution. And if final plats are substantially similar to the preliminary plat, then they can be approved administratively. That is the model that Hamilton County uses. We added a sunset provision for final plats. The language states final plats will expire if less than 50% of the total number of lots within the subdivision have not been developed within 10 years of the date of the final plat approval. Currently, final plats do not expire. And during our conversations with Planning Commission, they actually added 2 more times where they would expire to create more, more incentive for developments to get completed. So there's they're proposing a 5-year sunset and a 15-year sunset. If 25% or less of the total number of lots have been developed within 5 years, it would expire, and if only 75% or less of the total number of lots have been developed within 15 years, the final plat will expire. So the language that you got has all 3 of those sunsets included. We also are proposing establishing a consolidated preliminary and final plat process when this is appropriate. We are adding greater clarity to the ability for Planning Commission to waive or modify the subdivision regulations for unique circumstances, and general effort to modernize and standardize the language and organization of the regulations, including allowing for electronic submissions. How the regulations stay the same, City Council still votes on plats, just earlier in the process. Bonds are still required for work that is not complete when the final plat is recorded, such as sidewalks. Staff evaluated the appropriateness of letters of credit, but legal counsel recommended bonds. And then developers still have to follow all applicable regulations, such as the Hamilton zoning ordinance. I did want to note, we've been working on this for a while with a wide variety of partners. We started working on it with an outside consulting firm, McBride Dale Clarion, in early 2020. We thought it was important to leverage some outside knowledge that they've done this work in all different kinds of communities around Greater Cincinnati, and thought that was useful for our subdivision regulations. And then Frost Brown Todd Legal Counsel has reviewed numerous drafts throughout the process. We presented an ordinance review commission on September 16th, 2020. Part of the delay moving it forward, it was that they had some good points we looked into. For example, I believe the mayor brought up concerns about letters of credit, which ultimately led us to take that out of the final draft. And then we've also been working with the Home Builders Association of Greater Cincinnati, and to get their input. So we had a virtual meeting in the fall of 2020, have gone back and forth, made changes based on recommendations that they've made. They received the final draft of the subdivision regulations in February and stated they had no additional input, so that's when we moved it forward. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions or comments? If a plat expires, that starts the review process all over again, is that
Yes.
correct? And thank you for the public roads and the sidewalk. I think that'll make things better for subdivisions. I had to take a lot of work, but didn't it?
Yes, it's been a good project.
Mr. Mayor, just one question. So sidewalks, it says if sidewalks aren't complete within 5 years, does that fall on the homeowner? Is that on the developer who has to put those in?
This means that it would fall on the developer. Right now, it's the builder that builds them out, which means that if the lot doesn't get built on for 25 years, there's just a gap in the sidewalk. So this puts it back on the developer.
Back on the developer. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
Liz, over this past year, people in your department, yourself this evening, you've talked about, I'll call it the consolidation. You talked about this, I believe you said 1959. So when Ed Wilson was in and visited with us and shared, and again, the consolidation and making things more uniform for the 2020s that we're in today. So thanks for all the work. I realize that this isn't done, like you said, in half an hour in what could have been a major presentation, but this is hours and hours of work. Using collaborations with McBride Dale Clarion, Frost Brown Todd for their input. So we're doing things in unison with other communities that are also doing the same thing. So again, we've all conferred over the years about what are you doing up here, what are you doing down there that would make Hamilton better, and we can use those as a template. So again, congratulations on what you're presenting tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. I should note, I should have put up here that this was just as much the engineering department as it was the planning department, so I don't want to say that.
Other questions or comments?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No one else in the audience wish to speak at this time at this public hearing? Anyone on council wish to be heard or make a motion at this time?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Fear?
I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Fear, second by Councilmember Ryan. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. Public hearing closes at 7:17. I'll ask that the motion at the regular meeting be reconvened.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Vaughn, second by Councilmember Fear. Roll call vote to reconvene the regular meeting.
Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes.
Motion adopted, 7-0.
Okay, we now go to council actions pertaining to legislative items, and I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Fear.
I move that a note be made upon the minutes that each member of council was furnished a printed copy of each item of legislation prior to it being considered at this meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Fear, second by Vice Mayor Pullman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion is carried. We go to pending legislation, agenda item number 14, second reading of emergency ordinance involving Assistant Law Director.
An emergency ordinance amending Schedule D2 of the city's classification and compensation plan relative to the pay range for Assistant Law Director, temporary, as set forth in ordinance number OR 2019-8-78, adopted August 24th, 2019, amended from time to time and repealing the relevant portion of the existing Schedule D2, second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Vaughn.
I move the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Vaughn, second by Councilmember Ryan. Any comment about this one? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
Forgot to mention, but nobody did sign the public hearing book on agenda item 13 either, so I apologize for not saying that. We go to agenda item number 15, a second reading of an ordinance involving the foreclosed property registration and notification program.
An ordinance supplementing the codified ordinances of the City of Hamilton, Ohio by adding thereto a new chapter within the Health Code, Chapter 1707, Foreclosed Property Registration and Notification Program, second reading.
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Pullman.
make a motion that the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Pullman, second by Councilmember Fear. Any discussion on this one? Hearing none, roll call please.
Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown.
Brown.
Is that a yes, sir, or no, Mr. Brown?
That's a yes.
Thank you. Moeller.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
Go to agenda item number 16, second reading of an ordinance involving preliminary and final plat for Enclave at Twin Run.
An ordinance approving the preliminary and final plat for the Enclave at Twin Run, Section 3, consisting of 9.9 acres of the Enclave at Twin Run subdivision situated in the First Ward, north side of the City of Hamilton, Butler County, Ohio. Charles W. Thornton, applicant, second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Nab.
I move the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nab, seconded by Councilmember Vaughn. Any discussion on this one? Roll call, please.
Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
Go to agenda item number 17, second reading of an ordinance involving our chapter 943 electricity.
An ordinance amending section 943.051 of chapter 943 electricity of the codified ordinances of the City of Hamilton, Ohio, second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Fear.
I move the ordinance be adopted.
Second.
Councilmember Fear, second by Councilmember Ryan. Any discussion about this? I believe these are solar rates, is that correct?
Yes, we're not changing the rate structure at all. It's a reference to it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes.
Ordinance adopted, 7-0.
Thank you. We go to agenda item number 18. Second reading of an ordinance involving an abandoned gas station cleanup.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute and deliver the abandoned gas station cleanup grant agreement with the Ohio Development Services Agency for 101 Pershing Avenue, second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Ryan.
move that the ordinance be adopted.
Second?
Motion by Councilmember Ryan, second by Vice Mayor Pullman. Any discussion or comments on this one? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown.
Brown.
Is that a yes or a no, Mr.
Yes.
Brown? Yes. Moeller.
Abstain.
So that ordinance is adopted, 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 abstention.
Thank you. We go to new legislation, agenda item number 19. First reading of an ordinance involving the new subdivision regulations we just heard about.
An ordinance repealing Ordinance 6038 subdivision regulations and establishing new subdivision regulations in Part 11, Title 3, Sections 1189.01 through 1199.12 for the City of Hamilton, Ohio. City of Hamilton applicant, first reading.
Thank you. We go to agenda item number 20. First reading of an ordinance involving a right-of-way dedication plat for North B Street area.
An ordinance approving a right-of-way dedication for North B Street, parts of lots number 1520, 1511, and 1510, situated in the First Ward, north side of the City of Hamilton, Butler County, Ohio. First reading.
Thank you. Go to agenda item number 21. First reading of the ordinance involving the CDBG CARES Act funds.
An ordinance approving the City of Hamilton substantial amendment to annual action plan update for fiscal year 2019-2020, delineating the statement of objectives and proposed use of Community Development Block Grant CV CDBG-CV program funds, and authorizing the submittal of said plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. City of Hamilton applicant to accept the appropriate up to $342,332 in CDBG CV funds. That's a first reading, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Takes care of the legislation. Audience of City Manager. Okay, audience of City Council. Mentioned, I believe there's a rowing event this weekend. I saw him practicing on the river recently, and starts early Saturday morning. Okay, executive session request.
There is, Mayor, for 2 items. The first is to consider the appointment of a public employee, and the second is to consider the purchase of property for public purposes, also for the sale of property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage.
Question for the law director real quick. She's back there. I don't need that special motion because it wasn't mentioned in economic development. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, is there a motion that we go into executive session for those stated purposes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Nab, second by Councilmember Ryan. Roll call vote, please.
Pullman,
Yes.
Fear,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Nab,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes.
Motion adopted, 7-0.
Okay, we go into executive session at 7:25. Thank you for watching and being here as well. And we'll come out of the executive session just to adjourn the regular meeting. Thank you, and it is 7:25.
All right, everything is muted. Hold on just one moment.